Welcome to Ready to be Romanced. I'm Tori, and today we're discussing Skin of the Night. It is the 50th episode, and I decided as a little treat to myself for making it for 50 episodes, which is funny because this really seemed like a labor of love just because each episode I am essentially reading a book. So it's like each episode takes 20 plus hours to make. And my other podcast, I have over probably 400 episodes. But again, making it to 50 on this one feels really special to me. And so yeah, I decided to do my favorite book, and I decided to do it solo because I truly just couldn't fathom having a discussion with someone who didn't like the book. So sometimes I'll ask guests to come on, sometimes they suggest a book, sometimes we're just covering something that's really popular. Neither of us have read it, or one of us has read it, or whatever. But I generally don't know what their opinions are. And no one I know has really read this book. It's actually kind of it's an indie author. It was pretty self-published, I believe. And it had a moment on TikTok where it went viral. That's how I found out about it, through Book Talk. But it is not by any means a mainstream book. So no one I knew had read it. So I was like, I would be asking them to read it. I very vocally have been on this podcast and on Instagram and said that this is my favorite book. And I was just worried that someone that I suggested it to wouldn't like it. And then we would be debating points that I didn't want to debate. So I decided I'll do it myself. It'll be the 50th episode. And here we are. I know I said that I was trying to make it to 50 before the spring, but then just personal stuff happened and ended up recording the last 4-ish episodes over the summer. Now I'm going on vacation, so I really wanted to get 50 episodes out. And then I'll be back in November, I believe. And it's always so fucking annoying when podcasters say, literally, I've been podcasting for 7 years. So annoying when people say, we'll be back at this time, and then they aren't. So my apologies. And also, so funny, I've been podcasting for so long, and I'm just completely blowing some of the core tenets of podcasting, which is you show up at the time that you said you would every week, so you are in someone's routine. All of that to say that I'll be back in November with episode 51. Okay, let's get into it. Spoiler warning, we will be discussing Skin of the Night, but not anything that comes after that. So it is a book written by C.K. Bennett, and it was first published in spring 2021. But since then, C.K. has published a second edition in September 2022. Some of the dates are even a little bit murky, but basically she is an author that was writing on Wattpad under the pen name Claire D. Bennett, and she had put out this series, the Night series, and then she had also put out Memento Mori, which is also a really good book. And then I saw whispers online when I was doing my internet investigation, spoiler alert, that she put out another duet called The Faceless Man. And why I'm saying this in such a vague way is because her website and stuff doesn't exist anymore. She hasn't posted on Instagram in years. And basically what happened was she published the first book, and then a lot of people, she said, was they were misinterpreting some of Will's behavior, the jealousy that he had and stuff, and some of his pursuit of her didn't seem fair or something like that. So she edited it and published the second edition in September 2022. I thought because I had read the first edition of the book, I thought that I had that on my Kindle still, but for some reason I cannot find it in my files at all. So I have this second edition, which we're going to be talking about today. But if anybody has a hard copy or an ebook of the first edition, I would love it, because I am partial to the first edition, probably just because I read it first. But yeah, there is some also maybe confusing things online, because the book was called Skin of the Night, and then it changed to When the Night Falls, and then the second book was called Into the Night, but then it was changed to Heart of the Night. So a lot going on, but I feel like that is just kind of like the Wattpad-y self-published work, right? Like that kind of makes sense to me. And it's kind of fun also, the fluidity, and like I find that too as an indie podcaster, like you do have some more or just like less rigid things that you have to follow, and I like that about this. I am a little worried that she's going to listen to this episode just because we have interacted before. She used to be really active on Instagram, and lots of people would send her messages and stuff like that, and she would reply, as well as she asked for beta readers for the second edition of the second book, and I applied. And then my sister is totally fine now, but at the time she had gotten into a really bad car accident. So most of 2024, people might not know this, but I was not well because my sister was not well. And I think I had some late episodes around that time, but I was still way more consistent than I am now. But anyways, I just had so much personal stuff going on that I wasn't able to read it and give my opinions on it. And it's like, I want her to like me so bad because when you have a favorite book, I just feel like it, and that's when it means so much to you, you just, I don't know, you want the person to like you, I guess. It very much reminds me of Olivia Rodrigo and Taylor Swift, because they obviously had a falling out, and Olivia Rodrigo used to be the biggest Taylor stan. I always just think nowadays, like, it probably sucks and it probably is painful to listen to some of her favorite music because they ended up getting to know each other and then had a falling out. And I know that that is obviously not the case since we've had like literally 2 text exchanges, but I don't know, you just never want that from people that you admire. So before we get to the recap, why is Skin of the Night my favorite book? I really like a lot of concepts of it. So I read obviously mostly romance and a lot of romance. A lot of it is really plot driven versus like narrative driven. This book is very narrative driven. I'm actually quite worried about how this episode is going to turn out because it's so narrative driven that when we recap the plot points of the story, not much actually happens. And a lot of it is so much turmoil within the characters that I feel like is going to be maybe just a little bit harder to explain. But it's very much the summer I turned pretty, and I feel like we're missing that in S3. Like, I do feel like we're missing some of Belly's inner thoughts, and that's what makes the book really special. So I am a little nervous about that, but it just feels so normal compared to a lot of romance novels. It seems very, honestly, realistic. Like, I just think it's very grounded in reality. I think, like, the characters mess up, they make up, they, stutter, they say the wrong thing, they make some bad decisions. And I do think that, and like they have negative emotions like jealousy and stuff like that. And I do think that obviously some aspects of those are in lots of romance novels, but I'm just finding a lot of the ones that I have been reading maybe as of lately, or the ones that are mainstream, they seem, even if they are of this world, they seem like such fantasy. It's like, well, you wouldn't say that, or this wouldn't turn out so perfect, or to be honest, the guy wouldn't act like that. Like, unfortunately, it's a guy written by a woman, right? And I know that's the case here, but I do think it is just really grounded in reality. So I really appreciated that. It seemed like it would be a story that happened to me or my friends. And then the other thing that I like about it is like the characters, especially Kara's like inability to be vulnerable or like be like taken care of in this way, I think is really relatable. The way that they've like seen other people and have had other experiences. That's another thing that happens sometimes in romance novels. It's like really trying to be the soulmate, or like this is the one person and stuff like that. And yes, that is the case in this book, but it again feels a lot more realistic when you find the partner that you want to marry versus like some of the other books that I've read on this podcast. And then, yeah, like I mentioned before, there are differences from the first edition to the second edition. We're reviewing the second edition. Very much a lot of the jealousy stuff came out. To me, it was Will really gives Edward Cullen, so I feel like you can really see some of those, like that archetype in Will. So I think that you can really see that. It's really banter heavy, and I feel like I talk on this podcast all the time about loving the banter and the in-jokes and like flirting that's teasing and stuff. And then my ex was a lawyer, and this features 2 lawyers, and I feel like that something in me has a type. And when I first read this book, I think it was the first book, I was like, wow, this like male lead is just right up my alley, like truly. Okay, enough chit chat. Let's get into it. So it's April 2019, and we meet our FMC, Kara, and she's out for drinks with her best friend, Livy. And they're at a bar called Disrepute in London. And they are on the hunt for Dick. Like, after Livy had broken up with her long-term boyfriend, Colin. And they are both third-year law students at UCL. And I know that obviously Canada has different barrister and solicitor things and different schooling. Like in Canada, you have to get your undergrad first before you get your JD. It seems like that's not the case here because they're about 21 and they're in their third year. This is like it's their law degree, but it would, I think, be kind of like an undergrad. And they're both very serious about school, and they're graduating this year. So that's another thing. It's a 3-year program, which again, very rarely happens in Canada. They're out on the prowl for some men, which I really respect. And I do feel like maybe there's bars where I live that are like, okay, a lot of like cops frequent this, which like, bleh. Or a lot of like firefighters work here, better. But I feel like I've never heard of a place that like is very like, oh, the lawyers hang out here. So it's like, let's start sharing that information, because this is the perfect place if you're an aspiring lawyer to pick yourself up a lawyer boyfriend. So they finally see 2 hot men that they can approach. And Livy is into one that ends up being Will, and Kara is into the other one. So she's like, I'm happy to wing woman you. I'll try to chat up the other one so you can speak to the one that you like. They approach them, ballsy, so impressive. And Kara gets this like really rude reply from who we will find out is Will. So what basically had happened was Andy and Will were kind of in a deep conversation about how Andy broke up with his long-term girlfriend because she wants kids and he doesn't know that if he's ready. He wants that. And so when these girls interrupt, clearly on the prowl, they're like, fuck, we're trying to like talk about something intimately. I also really love that this book showcases really like beautiful friendships between men, because I think that's so important for men. Like, I would want my future boyfriend to have good relationships with other men, because a lot of times you see women, like in hetero relationships, the woman ends up being the sole support system, the only friend, the only person providing an accountability or asking for accountability from these men. I just love that Will has a really solid group of guy friends, and he's really good friends with his brother Jason. So I really like that. And they have real conversations about life, that they're not going to dump all the emotional labor on their partner. So he's like, you're interrupting. And she at first is stunned because he looks really familiar. And obviously, big spoiler alert, but that's because, and it's so funny, I'm so dumb. Like, the first time reading this, I never would have clocked this, but it's because he is the brother of her friend and future flatmate, Jason. So that's why he looks familiar to her. So she's shocked, and she goes, have we met? And then Will is like, oh my God, that's like such a classic pickup line. Like, have we met somewhere before? And she goes in. She has absolutely no time for this man. And this is really fun, I think. And I like these types of men that are like, okay, yeah, like, give it to me. I remember when I met my sister's current boyfriend. Hopefully not. And he was describing the first time that he had met her, and that basically she said something kind of rude to him, and he was like, oh, I like love this. And so I thought that this was really fun. And he is just really impressed at how quick-witted and sharp, but like cuts like a knife that Kara is. So they go back to their table, the girlies, they lick their wounds. When it's time to get another drink from the bar, Livy goes up, and the men, Andy and Will, are like, we're so sorry. We were like in the midst of a deep conversation. You guys kind of caught us off guard. We weren't here with the purpose of meeting people, so we just kind of overreacted, and we'll buy you a drink as an apology. So Livy brings back 2 drinks, and Kara refuses to drink it. She's like, why would I placate these boys, make them feel better about what they did because they were fucking dicks? So she's like, I'm going up to the bar and buying my own drink, which is like, actually like feel like something that I would do. I'd be like, on principle, I'm not drinking this. But also I was like, you're kind of cringe, because you, obviously it's like, I think the thing to be the winner in this situation is to look unbothered, and she just looks obviously so bothered. So she goes up to the bar, and Will intercepts her again and insists on buying her drink. So then they go back to their table, and Will and Andy saddle up, and she has like 4 drinks in front of her. He really apologizes and explains what's happening, and he's just obviously very amused by Kara. She at one point is like, I feel like you're like getting off on this argument almost. And he's like, yeah, it's true. And she's like super shocked at at how forward he is. And again, this is something I love so much about Will, is he is really direct. And I'm not even talking about in the crude sense, but like he truly just like shares what's on his mind. And like, I just feel like it's so opposite of me. I just feel like I never say what's on my mind, or like I do, but I don't. I do in a lot of situations, and I don't in a lot of situations. But I do feel like when people are saying what's on their mind and it feels vulnerable, obviously they're like embarrassed or whatever, and he just says what's on his mind in a way that it's like, this is what's happening. This is like a fact. It's not devoid of emotion though. It's just like, this is the way it is. And I really, really like that about him. And so he is fishing for Kara's name. He's really intrigued by her. And so she says, my name is Cassandra, or you can call me Sandra. And so, like I said, they go back to their table. She is like, by the way, my name isn't Kara, it's Sandra. And Livy's just like, oh, okay. And I like love this, because it is kind of funny that they're doing this with like hot prospects, but like, it's so fun to go to a bar with girls and like with your girlies, and you put on a fake accent, or you just like fully lie about everything in your life or whatever. I wouldn't do that with like these hot, obviously sophisticated men, but it's like, it's so fun going to a bar and just being like an absolute hooligan, just having a little bit of fun. So Livy's like, Will is obsessed with you, and yeah, I'll go along with the charade that your name is Sandra. So the guys ask what the girls do, and Livy's like, well, I am a UCL student, and Kara lies and says that she's a med student in Edinburgh. And she thinks that this is a good excuse because Jason, her friend and future flatmate and Will's brother, is a med student. So she's like, I feel like I could fake enough for this to look real. And Will, again, he calls her stunning, and he's like quite forward, not in a creepy way, but like quite forward and very clear that he wants to sleep with her. And she's so shook because he's so crude, I guess. Again, but it's not in a way that like he wants to be crass or like uncouth or something like that. It's just for him, just feels like it's like, well, this is just the way it is. Andy and Livy leave to buy more drinks, but I feel like they also wanted to give these two some time by themselves. And Will just asks her to come back to his apartment, and she declines. She's like, well, I'm visiting Livy, and I don't want to bail her. Like, my purpose is bail on her. My purpose is to hang out with her. Which I thought was a very good excuse and kind of true. She was there to console Livy, to hype her up, to be on the prowl, so ditching her would seem rude. Also, we hate those girls that just do that. And I don't know, he's just so smart at reading situations. He like immediately clocks that Kara was actually initially attracted to Andy, and he just, I feel like, reads the situation in a way that is accurate. The only thing that he doesn't know is that she's lying about everything. But at one point, he turns her face and he holds the drink up to her lips and tells her to finish it, which, like, she explains it as, like, one of the most erotic things that have ever happened to her. Very reminiscent, I thought, of the Peach scene in The Summer I Turned Pretty, where Conrad wipes peach juice off of Belly's face with his shirt. Him holding, like, a martini glass up to her lips and then like watching her drink it does feel like so erotic. And then he asks to kiss her, and then he kisses her. So it was very cutesy. I really liked it. And it's so funny because she's like drinking, and then she's like, and he's like, slow down, Sandra. Like, I like my women like coherent or whatever. And I don't know. It's very, very cute. So they decide to leave. They get Andy and Livy's approval, and they're walking to his apartment. And Kara's like, no, I'm being a bad friend. So, and this is the other thing. Like, Will is definitely persistent, and he's definitely doing the chasing. And I think that's also something that I really like, is that he just seems so clear on what he wants. But when Kara is like, I feel like I'm being a bad friend, he's like, okay, let's call her. Like, let's talk this out. Like, they talk about it and, again, lay out, like, the facts of the situation. And I really also like that about him. Like, nothing that she says, I think that changes at some point in the book, but, like, at this point, nothing that she says seems, like, unreasonable and stuff, and I really like that. So Livy's like, no, you're all good. And she's like, it's definitely friend vibes with Andy, but I'm having a good time, so go ahead, call me when you get home. And so Will and Kara walk back to his apartment, and he's in this really, really posh apartment. Or flat, should I say. They go up to the top floor because he lives in the penthouse, obvi. And he starts kissing her in the hallway once they get into the inside of the apartment. And he lifts her up onto his shoulders, which this part is, like, so crazy to me. I've seen this in, like, I've obviously, like, seen this. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. I've obviously, like, seen this in some, like, porn scenes. I've definitely heard it described in books where the guy, he seems like a lean, like, he's definitely over 6 foot. I think he's described in the book, but he seems lean to me. He works out at the gym a lot, but I don't see him, like, as, like, a bulky guy. And she also really likes working out. So, again, I see her as, like, more of a muscular, in shape girl, not, like, a really frail, skinny girl. So he, lifts her up and, like, pushes her against the wall, but she's on his shoulders. At least this is how I interpret it. And I always just think that's so crazy because I think it's like, I just live in, like, such a tiny apartment. Like, if anyone ever did that to me, A, they would not be able to lift me up like that. And B, my head would, like, hit my roof, basically. But anyways, love that for her. And he, like, starts going down on her. It's, like, really good. He's, like, really trying to make this pleasurable for her, which is also obviously something that's really important in romance novels. After that, he takes her into his dining room, and he lays her out on the table. She's, like, gripping the side of the table, and her body's, like, over the dining room table. So her butt's, like, off of it. And then he fucks her. And she is, like, there's a point, because they're like, we need to wear condoms, obviously, and practice safe sex. And there's a point where she, like, basically doesn't even feel him put the condom on, which he does, obvi. And it's just because she's, like, so blissed out from all the orgasms that he's giving her, which is multiple, obviously, again. And so he takes her to his bedroom after this and keeps fucking her, by the way. And he hasn't come yet. This is also crazy. They have like marathon sex. So she is like orgasming multiple times, and he like is delaying his orgasm by like stopping and like giving her head and like stuff like that. And we hear more about this at the end of the book, but this is also crazy. And I never understood how, I guess, guys could be so in control of this. And also I just felt, this is so TMI, but I just feel like a lot of guys are like really like one and done, or like, and I've only ever been with one person that has like almost like planned it out so he could either come multiple times or hold off his orgasm for a really long time. And I just think that is like so crazy. But that's him. Like, he's putting like forethought into this. He really wants to make it good for his partner. And he's like definitely dominant, but like I wouldn't say he's necessarily like dominant in a kinky way. He's just like a more dominant person. Like, he's like calling the shots of like what positions they're in and stuff like that. But it's not necessarily like restraining or pain per se, even though I do think he like spanks her. Anyways, she falls asleep. Obviously, she is spent. And when she wakes up in the morning, he's made her breakfast and she gets to shower and she gets a little shirt from him and stuff like that. And he calls her a cab. And during this breakfast, she eats his like omelet or whatever. And it's like, this is also like reminiscent of something I've had before. And it's because obviously Jason has made her eggs, and then they kind of have another frank conversation. He's like, I want to see you again. I know that you live out of town, but you're not that far away, so I could come see you or something like that. Or whenever you come here to see Livy, we could see each other. She's just like, no, that's not going to work. I'm really dedicated to my studies. And boy, does he learn that later on in the book. And he's upset that it's a one-time thing, but he says his piece and then lets her go. He says something like one of my favorite banter lines, I think, again, in like like all of the books I've ever read. I think like Recent from Akhdar had some really good lines too, but there's a moment where they're having sex and she says something I think that he really likes. And he says something like, who are you? And she says, I could be whoever you want me to be for tonight or whatever. And then he says like mine. Like, I don't know, it sounds so lame when I say it, but I thought it's one of my favorite lines because, I don't know, they're talking about, I think she wants to go down on him or something like that. And he's like, are you like the devil? Like, just, he's like, you're gonna fuck me up because you don't, like, this is so perfect and we're never gonna do this again. And so this conversation ensues, and it's like both romantic but like hot and vulnerable but not too much. And yeah, it really does something for me. The next scene is when they're at uni and we meet Erin, which is one of Livy and Kara's classmates. Actually, you know what? It's so funny. I call her Kara, obviously, because I'm Canadian, but I bet it's Cara, which is so funny because I always just think it's Kara, but I feel like in England it would be Cara. But anyways, Livy and Kara are with their classmate Erin. Erin is someone that she sleeps with casually, but for the past 3 years. This is one of the things that I just talked about this in the Deep End episode that I did, but like sometimes it's frustrating when the characters are like so obtuse about things. Like, she's like, I don't have feelings for this guy. And it's clear for her that she doesn't have feelings, but she's so shook when he has feelings for her. And it's like, I just don't understand how you could not only sleep with somebody for 3 years, but be their friend, which friendship has a lot of characteristics of a romantic relationship, and be surprised when this is something more. Because it's like, you literally hang out with his mom. Like, you go for dinner at his mom's house. So it's like a little bit obtuse. But anyways, she is always talking about how easy it is with Erin. Even says that to Will, like, because they both are talking about how they don't really do one night stands, and it's because they have casual partners. But she says it's almost like air, like it's just so part of her routine at this point. And they're all studying, and Kara gets an email from Day and Night, which is the law firm that she's going to be doing an internship at. And it's also Jason Knight's dad, like it's his dad's firm. So she is like fully, she's like, I guess not a Nepo baby, but like using her connections to get a internship over the summer. And she gets an email from them saying that a paralegal at the firm is going on mat leave and they want her to extend her placement to cover for this person. So she's like stoked on this. They're heading out and Erin's like, do you want to like go hook up? And she says no, because she's like, well, I'm moving this coming weekend. But the truth is that she just actually doesn't want to have sex with him because she had sex with Will. And their arrangement allows that, but she feels emotionally conflicted. And she's really conflicted at this point because Erin and her, have this communication, but she says in the last 3 years, he's never mentioned another person and she has mentioned very few. And this is the first time that it has like impeded their type of relationship. She says just like how she so rarely says no to him. But yeah, so she moves in with Jason and then she heads to day and night to sign her contract. And we meet Jason and Will's dad, John, and they're walking up to Will's office and John's like, so you're going to meet your new boss. He has more bark than bite. Like, you'll do fine, but he can be like a little bit cold or like whatever. And by the way, it's like Jason's older brother and stuff like that. And we meet again William. Obviously, she is like fucking shook to her core. He's pissed because he is in real time finding out that she completely lied to him. They have this moment where like it's so obvious that they know each other that they're like, have we met before? In front of John. And I feel like it becomes almost like an inside joke. And he is pissed because she's lying. And he's like, I could have met you. Like, you were under my nose this whole time. Like, you've been friends with Jason for years. I could have met you earlier. And I think that like that again is like, that is such a sweet sentiment. And I feel like a lot of people that meet later in life, this bitch is 21, so not necessarily in this case, but are like, I wish I met you earlier. And that's the case. Very cute. And she's like, okay, I gotta quit this internship. This is so inappropriate and I could never do that. And he's like, I'll behave. This will be detrimental to your career because you won't get another placement this late in the game. And this, because we're like a really good law firm and I'm a really good lawyer, this will be only a plus to your career. So she gets the contract, and while she's reading it at her desk, Andy walks by because he also fucking works there, of course, and has to pretend not to know her, which is really funny. And then she goes back into his office to give him the signed contract, and he says something inappropriate about her butt because she has like a really good butt that gets commented on the whole book. It's so fucking random and so weird. I do think that this is a little bit of the C.K. Bennett like IRL treatment. A, she's a law student or maybe a current lawyer, and B, I feel like she has posted a lot on her Instagram about working out a lot. So I feel like this is a little bit of her in Kara, but she's like, okay, this is a mistake. Like, you can't behave like you said you would. But then she eventually agrees to stay on. And she's like, can we just keep this between us though? Like, I really don't want you to tell Jason. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. That's like fair. But by the way, like, I do hang out with him and I do have like a close relationship with him. So Kara heads back to her apartment and Jason's like asking about how it went with Will. And this is the start of many lies, obviously. So Friday comes along and Kara is assembling some furniture in her new room in Jason's apartment, and Will just lets himself in because he has a key and they watch all the Chelsea games together. And she thinks it's Jason, so she like is yelling like, I'm gonna make us dinner and like blah 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 blah. Then she finds out it's him and she is shook. And he flirts with her like so openly. He like helps her with making her wardrobe, and Jason comes home eventually and they all hang out. But at this time, Erin interrupts. He calls her and it's like super clear that he's calling her to ask her to go have sex. and Will gets jealous again. So Kara goes back, like she declines. She says, I'm busy, goes back to her bedroom to finish her wardrobe. And because she's obsessed with Will, but not willing, to admit it to herself, she leaves the door open so she can hear them talk. Jason asks if Will is going to go to Violet, who Kara met at day and night, so another lawyer. It's the person that Will casually sleeps with, and she is also jealous. And then he also mentions another woman, I believe it's Francesca, who he also at some point was casually sleeping with. He admits that he had met this girl on Friday at Disrepute or whatever the fuck. Her name's Sandra, and he's quite hung up on her. And Jason, I feel like, is a little bit surprised by that because Will had a previous partner named Kate when he was in law school, I believe, or like doing his master's or something like that. And it just seems like it's not very easy. Like, he doesn't get hung up on people a lot. I don't even think he was really seemingly that hung up on Kate. So when Will goes to leave, he stops by Kara's room and says bye. And it's obvious to him that she was listening. This is, again, very much reminds me of Edward Cullen, because Edward Cullen in Twilight, he can't read Bella's thoughts, but he can hear conversations that Bella is having with her classmates. And so when she gets asked about Edward and stuff like that, she says things about him that she knows that he will hear. And I'm going to read you, it switches to Will's POV at this point, and I'm going to read you a quote from him because I read this a million times. I've reread this book a million times. This is also very Edward coded, but I just love, and I feel like this was something that maybe people actually didn't like in the first edition, and I could see how people could not like this, but I love this quote so much. I think it really explains Will's character. Again, it just shows the beauty of this narrative-driven book. Okay, so the chapter is chapter 11, and it's called Hunt of a Lifetime, and it's Will's POV. One cannot choose with whom to fall in love. It is entirely primal and has been ruled by instincts as long as humankind has existed. Had I been a victim of the delusion that we had such a thing as free will, I would have believed that you could only choose whether to pursue or not. But I wasn't. I knew full well that my reaction to her existence was embedded in my DNA, and that it was encoded in my genes that I would pursue her despite her rejection. However, I was a strategic type of suitor, the calculating kind. Some would even say cunning. Unlike those who went straight for the kill, I preferred to lure my target into my web. In order to do that, I had to know my prey, how it operated, how it thought, how it could be seduced and finally overcome. Indeed, the beginning of love is very much a hunt, thrilling, rapacious, and utterly instinctual. All at once, the brain and the body have turned toward one person. The senses have sharpened to perceive even the slightest sign of their existence. However, when falling in love, you never recognize it at the very moment it happens. In retrospect, it's easy to identify the moment which triggered the realization, but one cannot recognize it in the exact moment when love first begins to manifest. Because of that, I was entirely unaware of just how profound my feelings were on the verge of becoming. In fact, as I glanced at Kara across the gym, I thought all I was guilty of was fleeting interest or rude curiosity that was based on primitive reproductive urges. I hadn't realized that the process had begun, that with each second that ticked by, I was gradually losing myself in her, that my sense of self was slowly waning to create room for her in favor of her. Instead, I was under the impression that I was mainly looking to sway her mind, to repair my bruised ego. I was bitter that she hadn't found my offer sufficient enough, bitter that she had been able to remain sensible despite my ardent efforts to stir romanticisms in her, and I was bitter that she didn't seem as preoccupied with me as I was with her. I simply hadn't grasped that how I reacted to her soft voice delivering sharp remarks was a sign of love manifesting, that her seductive eyes and the total fire they contained had instead lured me into their heat. Nor did I, at the time, fathom the reason I would gladly have made a fool of myself merely for the chance to hear her laugh. Oblivious to the truth, I mistook genuine affection for an injured ego and assumed it was only my vanity that urged me to change her mind. I had no idea that it was the prelude to love. I was convinced that if I managed to change her verdict about us, I would finally be able to exercise her constant presence in my thoughts. I was aware it was cynical motivation, but to spare my sanity, I considered it a necessary evil. However, I was still contemplating which route to take in order to achieve my goal. Thus far, I had settled on the tactic of trying to befriend my foe, because if I did, I could perhaps locate her weakness and eventually exploit it. The trouble was that I never encountered an enemy quite so strong before. She seemed impossible to read, like she existed in a language entirely foreign to me. There was a mystery to her, like the suspense of a tale I had never heard before and couldn't predict the end of. She was whole all on her own, and frankly, I admired her for that. She didn't need anyone but herself, much less me. She wore her independence like armor, and it protected her to a fault. So then, how does one defeat an enemy boasting such a brilliant defense? The Trojan way, I supposed. I would have to trick her into letting me past her walls, and once inside, I would make them crumble one by one until only she remained. Then at last, my mind would be free of her, my ego restored. Perhaps the extent of my determination should have encouraged me to suspect that something about my fascination with her was beyond the ordinary. Had I truly not cared for her, then her rejection wouldn't have injured me as badly as it had. But I didn't suspect. Instead, I had gone blind and was desperately groping in the dark. I love that. This is when they go to the gym together. At this point, I was like, okay, guys, like, she's going to be working for you in a little while. Why, Jason, are you suggesting that they all work out at the gym? Like, I do kind of feel like it's inappropriate for a workplace, but then I also think it's like some places are just like that, or maybe it's a different culture there than it is here. But I'm like, that's Loke crazy. And he flirts with her again. He really likes to rile her up, and I think that's another thing that I like, because I feel like I am often the one riled up. And after they work out, Jason and Will are in the locker room, and a man makes a comment again about Kara's ass, because apparently her ass is fucking mwah. And Will like threatens to fight him, and Jason is like really taken back by this, because why would he like threaten to fight this person? And so they get out of the locker room, and Jason tells Kara what happened. Will goes on this like feminist, a little bit of a feminist rant, and she is kind of surprised but impressed and confused. So later that night, they head to the Knight household for dinner, and Kara comes along, and I guess like it's not weird because they're family friends, but it is kind of weird, and this is just how books are. And I guess like I think this happened a lot in Pumpkin Spice Cafe or whatever, but like I guess also when you meet someone and they're now in your orbit, you I guess just run into them more often. But it's like she's been friends with Jason for years, enough to like move in with him, but she's never met the parents and Will, the brother. Like that kind of seems weird to me if they all live in London. But they ask her if she's dating someone. She gives the party line that her studies are the most important thing. Will is kind of realizing that he's falling in love, but she's so dead set on her studies that he's never going to change her mind. So he is like completely zoned out, but he apologizes and just says there's stuff going on at work that's tough, but I'll snap out of it. And then we move on to Kara's POV, and it's the exam period, and they're all studying for their final exams. Will Instagram messages Kara, which is like low-key kind of crazy, because like obviously that's not super appropriate. He didn't like really ask, or like how else is he going to contact her, but should he even contact her? Kind of weird. I would be stoked because obviously she loves him, but like I could see where this if this is an unwanted suitor, how you wouldn't want this to happen. But she's like, I'm screwed because I can tell that I like him. I'm waiting on all his responses and being a freak about it. And Will offers to help her study, but she declines. Doesn't talk to her for a week, which I don't know why she didn't take him up on this too, because I truly think that if you have a possible mentor like that, you would just do so much better. But obviously she's smart and studies really hard, but I think if they sat down and studied, like, she would do even better. That night, Kara can't sleep, so Jason cuddles her, so we get a little bit of insight to more of their relationship, which obviously this becomes a big plot point later on. There's a night where Kara, Livy, and Aaron go for dinner at Aaron's mom's house. Livy asks if Will has made any more moves on Kara, and she lies about the Instagram messages. So they're still studying, and after that, Aaron and Kara go back to her place to have sex. Like we saw at the beginning of the book, sometimes when Will and Jason are going to watch the game, Will gets there before Jason does. And she doesn't know that he's coming over. So they're hooking up. There is clothes scattered from the front door to the bedroom. And Will lets himself in. He hears them hooking up. So he knocks over the shoe rack to stop them from fucking. This is also very much like that chapter I read out of him being a cunning and strategic suitor. They go to see what's happening, obviously. And Aaron is stoked to meet Jason's brother and Kara's future boss. So he's really obviously nice and like nonchalant. He goes and puts on the game for Will, and they start cleaning up, Kara and Will. And Will's like, I can't fucking do this. I just have to go. And Aaron assumes it's because it was awkward that her boss was seeing her in this state. But obviously it's because he was hearing Kara like moaning, and that's something that he dreams about and can't get out of his head and stuff like that. So he was really upset. And then Kara does see that he had messaged her earlier that day and said that he was coming over. But obviously she didn't see it, and she feels really bad, so she apologizes, but Will doesn't respond, which is bad. I feel like, again, it's like not really her fault. Like, she technically did nothing wrong. So it's shitty not to respond, but I would probably do the same. And then there's a night where Jason and Will and their friends are playing poker. They do this like once a month or whatever. And Jason gets blackout wasted. And Will is helping him back to the apartment. And Kara gets woken up by them and goes and checks on him. Jason says that he wants to sleep in Kara's bed. And obviously Will doesn't know that they cuddle and see each other naked and like all of this stuff. And even when Kara explains that and Jason explains that, he like still is like, no. And like, I kind of get that too. Like, he can't say no to them, but I get why he would be suspicious and upset about that, because she doesn't, like, he knows her obviously, but like up until this point, she has lied so many times that when she says like, I've never fucked him and like, it's so platonic and stuff like that, how would he actually know that she's telling the truth? Because she's lied about her identity and like just lied about like a million things, right? And they're lying to Jason currently and like all of this stuff. So he's like, don't fuck him. And that almost makes Kara cry because she feels like he doesn't trust her. And I see both perspectives. It would be upsetting for Kara that your, potential boyfriend thinks that you would sleep with his brother, but then also I feel like, I don't know, I just don't know any like 21-year-olds that cuddle and sleep together and see each other naked that aren't dating. And maybe that's a weird thing we as a society have with intimacy and stuff like that, but I don't know, I would be sus too, and I would be jealous. It's not a good thing, but I would be. And Kara's like, you can't even say anything. You're fucking other people. That means I can too. Like, technically I did nothing wrong, which is true. And he says that he has not slept with anyone since he slept with her. And is planning to call it off with both Violet and Francesca. Then he kisses her and she's happy, but she's also mad. He can also see that she's like turned on and stuff like that. Then he gets upset. He's like, does she just want to fuck me? Like, I don't know. All of these things are happening at one time. She's like, it's not that, like, she finally kind of admits, like, it's not that I don't want to date you. It's that I just can't. I can't at this moment give you what you want. Again, I really just think this shows Kara's immaturity and Will's maturity, because it's like, why couldn't you? I think obviously the placement, like her summer job, makes things complicated, and the Jason stuff makes things complicated for sure. But like, generally partners, you know, like help each other out. Like, I feel like she would have more time to study if he's making dinner or buying her dinner or whatever, or driving her to school, or like, I don't know, like and helping her study. Like, he's obviously like a well-respected lawyer, is really successful. So I just feel like his mentorship, his tutelage would actually be really good for her, but she just like can't see it. So he's like, okay, I'll just see you when I see you at work in June. So we get a flash forward to June. Kara and the crew have graduated. It's her first day and night, and she's really nervous. They arrive at like fucking half 7 or whatever the fuck they say, but 7:30 a.m. and that is so early. And he brings her coffee. It's slightly awkward, but the coffee says a peace offering. And we see these in this book. Like, there's a running joke that they have about whatever the guy is in literature that wants to sleep with his mom or whatever, the Freud stuff. And then there's an Electra like reference, and so he writes Electra on her cup, or he'll like write True Grit like from a conversation they had or whatever. I just like, it's so funny. And I think in the second book she ends up going to Starbucks and seeing the people that make her drink every morning. But it's just like so funny, because could you ever imagine IRL? Like, it's so romantic and so cute, but like, because it's like he's thinking about you and he's like purposely picking out these like funny jokes and names and stuff like that. But could you imagine IRL? You go every morning to get a coffee, and then you start getting a flat white for your girlfriend, and you make the barista write a peace offering, Electra, True Grit. Like, I guess like some of these aren't that weird, but like, I just like, they're like, oh, who can I make this one out to? And he's like, Electra. Like, it's so funny. But anyways, so she's kind of relieved that maybe he has forgiven her, because obviously that has been eating her up. And she is getting into the duties of her job. She goes to a meeting and just like write a report for him. And she is so impressed by how he handles this meeting. And this is fucking crazy. I get being like turned on or like excited or whatever, or like in awe, but she gets so wet that she has to go change her underwear. And she doesn't take any notes during the meeting, which is relatable. But Ellie helps her, and Will's like really impressed by her work, which is so nice. Like, he thinks she's so smart, and I would just fold. Like, I would have folded months ago. Like, if this type of guy was pursuing me. She is like, I guess, so dedicated to her studies, which is admirable. And that's what Will thinks too. He's like, the thing about her excuses, or main excuse, is like, it's admirable. And he's like, at some point I probably would have done the same thing. And we see that later on when Jason and like is hanging out with Will and Karen. He's like, I don't actually know why I didn't set you guys up earlier, because you guys actually have so many like common personality traits. It's the second day at work. He brings her another coffee, and Francesca arrives. And obviously she is starting to get insecure, and for good reasons. He's actually like breaking it off with her at this point, but Francesca is doing like a last ditch effort to have them get together before she moves to like Spain or something like that. And Will asks Kara to go get her from the lobby, which is bad. He is like clearly trying to use this situation to his advantage. And then Ellie implies that they have sex. I don't think I said, but Ellie is like, I think like Will's kind of like assistant. Francesca leaves and Kara goes back into Will's office and she is like, oh my God, they had sex. The window's open. Francesca's hair is fucked. His lips were swollen, blah, blah, blah. So she like makes some side jokes and they like kind of bicker and she's clearly, this is really eating her up. And then this was really relatable, but Will is like, yeah, on Fridays we go to disrepute. Like obviously she knows that, but he has to say that in front of everyone else. He's like, we would love to like celebrate your first week in the office. And she's like, I can't go, I have plans. But really it's because she doesn't trust herself around alcohol and Will. And I was like, that is so relatable, girl. Just when you know, you're like, see, I'm on the verge of texting this man or whatever, but I won't because I'm sober and I know better. But as soon as I get drunk, I don't know better and I have an excuse. So that was smart of her. And Kara heads home one night, or that night, I guess, and tells Jason about Will having sex. And he's like, that doesn't sound like Will. I don't think he would do that. But like, that's so inappropriate. Can I talk to him about it? And she's like, yes, which I would have been like, no, absolutely not. But then this is bad because she is bold-faced lying to Jason, obviously. But she asks, she's like, it was this woman, Francesca, like I know about Violet and Kate, and like, Kate was an ex-girlfriend. But what about that Sandra girl? And Jason's like, oh yeah, he hasn't mentioned her lately. So she's upset. And I was like, that's what you get for asking. And Kara, like, we can just see the like steady decline of her willpower and just her grip on the situation because she's dreaming about Will and her having sex and she like masturbates, but that almost makes it worse. And she's upset that he has, you know, maybe allegedly moved on, but she hasn't. And because she's having these sex dreams when she gets to work, she blushes so hard. And Will, like, he always is like, that's such a lovely color in your cheeks. Or like, no one's ever blushed like just at my mere presence and stuff like that. And it's so cute. As a blusher, I think it's very cute. And she's kind of being rude to him, but apologizes. But it's just because, again, she's just like really like, I don't know what I'm doing when I clearly want this man. And Will finally asks what's wrong. And she brings up Francesca. And he's like, no, we broke up. We didn't have sex. She tried to kiss me, but that's it. And then she's like, oh my God, I just like assumed this. This is also bad because he doesn't correct her. He doesn't say, well, you assumed that because I made the situation to look like that. But he admits, like, she's like, why did you guys break up? And he's like, because of you, basically. And she obviously likes that, but doesn't like that. So another week passes and it's Friday and the office goes to disrepute and she decides to go. Ellie wants to take her out to a club afterwards and like she just, I think it's the right thing to do. She can't avoid it forever. And Will's not there yet, so everything's okay. But he does arrive. What do you know? They're wearing the same shade of burgundy. And Will comes up to Kara and says, you look like you frequent this place, which is obviously really funny. And we get some conversation about Andy and his girlfriend Chloe getting back together. Children being the big sticking point. And again, seeing Will talk to his mates about relationship stuff is just like so refreshing and so hot to me. And then Violet's there and she bumps into Kara in the bathroom and she's like, Will would fucking kill me if he knew I was saying this, but you should just give him a chance. Like, he'll treat you like a goddess. And I was like, fucking fold, girl, fold. So she's obviously even more confused. She basically does the exact same thing she does the first night that she meets Will. There's like two strangers that are chatting her up, and Allie as well. And she lies about her name and all the details about her life. And they're like plying her with drinks. So eventually Will and Andy like pull her away, get her some water, etc. But they're like, no, we have plans to go to the club. Like, we're going. So Andy and Will join. They're dressed up in suits, obviously, because they came from work. They like kind of roll up their sleeves and stuff like that. And Kara goes, and this is again that alcohol talking. She goes, that color really suits you. And he says, hardly as much as you do. they like lose each other in the crowd. Kara starts dancing with the stranger. The stranger like follows her to the bathroom and tries to kiss her, but Will finds them and stops him, which is a very classic romance novel kind of trope. He like checks in with her to see if she's okay, and then they end up dancing, and she's like, I'm nervous. And she's like, I'm never nervous around guys. Like, this is just like, she just knows that this is important, that this isn't just like a fleeting crush, that this is like something. So because she's drunk, and this is so like what a girl's girl, like this is just so funny. But she's dancing with Will, and then she runs away, but she's like, follow me. And he runs after her, and they go to a secluded part of the club, and they kiss. Then he fingers her. Then he licks her cum from his fingers and is like delicious appetizer or something like that. And then he's like, let's go home. Like, this is dumb. We don't need to play games. Like, you clearly want me. I want you. Like, let's just do this. And she's like, fine. So like, I'm like, let's fucking go. He goes to find Andy to tell him that they're leaving, which, babe, it's like, you should have just texted him. But she goes, and again, she's like nervous, and I think she's kind of like, oh my God, I'm like, if I do this, like, I can't lead him on or whatever. So she, I think, is nervous about her decision. So she goes and pounds 3 tequila shots, also very relatable. And now she's like off her face. So Will just ends up taking her home, obviously. She's throwing up, and Jason is like helping her, just like she did a few weeks ago to him. Will's like, I'm gonna stay over. And then Jason's like, okay, for sure, like, you can have my room, I'll sleep with Kara. And he's like, no, like, why do you guys always sleep together? Like, it's weird. Have you guys ever had sex? Which is like bad. And so Kara pretends to be asleep at this point, and Will goes, and he, like, Kara talks about how he is inebriated too, so he's not making the best judgment calls, but he says, don't fuck her, I have, to Jason. So Jason is obviously shocked and quote unquote wakes up Kara, and she is crying because of all of this lying. And Will, like, he's so logical, and like, I do feel like Kara had to apologize for a lot, and Will kind of got away with things scot-free, but he's so logical. He's like, okay, your problems where you were studying for school, you've graduated, and the other problem that we didn't really super talk about, but like, you didn't want to tell Jason, and now he knows. So there's no problem, we can date. And Will tells Jason to leave so he can have a sleepover with Kara. They bicker, and she admits finally the real reason that she can't date him, that she's scared. She's scared to have a boyfriend. She's never had one before, and she just knows that this is going to be serious. And he's like, we can take it slow. We can figure this out together. And they start to hook up. Will asks her out on a proper date, and she finally gives in. And then he stops kissing her, and she's like, no, like, I want to have sex. And he's like, I don't fuck drunk women, which is like consent king. So in the morning, Jason and Kara talk things through. They patch things up. And like I said before, he's like surprised that he actually didn't set them up sooner. And Will is like, let's go for dinner tonight. Like, let's do our first date tonight. Which is like so crazy. He's so eager. But again, that's why like I like him so much, is because it's like, it's nice. Like, obviously he is playing games to some extent, but like, I just feel like everyone tries to be so nonchalant and not eager and not yearn and like not like always have the upper hand and stuff like that. And I just feel like he's not like that, and I really appreciate that. But she's like, I can't. I have a birthday party. But in reality, she actually has plans with Aaron, and it's like a double date. So she lies to Will. And again, this is so bad because it's just like lie after lie after lie that she's obviously going to get caught. And so they're like, okay, well, we could meet up afterwards. So she's really stoked about that. Meaning Will and Jason are going to another poker night, and she's going to the quote unquote birthday party. So she tells Aaron that she doesn't want to have sex because obviously she is starting things up with Will, which is good. But then like, because he's like, well, we don't have to have sex, but like, let's have a sleepover because that's like what we normally do. And then she's like, yeah, that's like true. And she just felt like at that point, and like I would do this too, it's a very people pleaser thing, but she just felt like at that point she had to go along with it. She didn't want to explain the Will stuff because it's weird as he's her boss. And I do feel like Kara, because she's a smart girl and she reads situations really well, like I do think in her heart of hearts she knows that Aaron probably likes her but is denying it so adamantly. So he's like, yeah, I'll stay over, like don't worry, we don't have to have sex or anything like that, which is also like, this guy is obviously great as well. And so Kara texts Will and says, I can't meet up because she's going to be with Aaron. And then they walk back to Kara's place. Obviously they expect it to be empty because of the poker night, but they had to move the poker night to Jason and Kara's place. And so they walk in, they see shoes, and they're like, oh my God. And then Will comes out because he thinks it's probably Kara coming home. And he's fucking pissed. So he asks to speak with Kara by herself. And he's like, why did you lie? I'm mad that you lied. Were you going to have sex with him? I actually don't believe you when you say you weren't. How am I supposed to trust anything that you said? And so she is really upset. And Aaron comes back to check in on her. Aaron like finally clocks in that they have slept together or whatever. And so they get into a fight. And then Kara asks him to leave. And I think people think that she would ask Will, but she asks Aaron to leave. And Will is so upset seeing Kara upset. So he's like, all is forgiven. I'm sorry that I made you upset, which I thought was very, very cute. And she's like, I just want some alone time. But later, after the poker games ended, he checks in on her and they fall asleep together. So in the morning, Jason and Kara talk while Will is still asleep, which is like, he wakes up so early, and then like on this day he sleeps till like fucking noon or something like that. And all is right in the world. And when Will wakes up, again, they're on good terms. They have sex. And Jason's there, and like, this is again so fucking weird because it's like your brother and like your flatmate, but they have sex. He's there. He like turns music on to like drown them out. And then after, because it's such marathon sex, he's like asking for sex tips. And stick around for the roundtable discussion because there's a difference in this conversation from the first edition to the second edition that is actually so fucking funny. Will is like, okay, we need to go on like a proper date. Like we tried before, but like, let's like do this properly. And they hang out all day and it's like the best thing ever. And he sleeps over again. And it's like how it should be, like, cause they can again, all hang out together. Obviously the office doesn't know what happened. They just think that Will helped Kara get home and they're like embarrassed on her behalf. They decide that they have to keep it above board at work, but they can kiss each other at the end of each day. But of course, on the first day that they try to do that, their kiss gets like super out of hand. And then we kind of come to the conclusion of the book. Kara goes over to apologize to Aaron for kicking him out and not telling him about Will and stuff like that. And he's so upset, and he admits that he's in love with her and was just waiting for her to change her mind about him and like finish school and all of that. And everyone is like, I told you so. And so she calls Livy for support, and then she calls Will, and he comes over. They order in food and fall asleep, and he supports her. And I was like, this is exactly why it's nice to have a partner to help you, Kara. And you were so bullheaded. And that's the end of Skin of the Night. Let's get into our roundtable discussion. This is our internet investigation, our cursory peruse of the internet of things you need to know. So as I said at the beginning of the episode, CK Bennett is like fully offline. I know she's very private IRL, and she was last working on a fantasy novel, which I thought was interesting too, because she said that was actually more her style, not this like romancy love story stuff. But yeah, there's no follow-up to Heart of Stone, which is the Memento Mori series that I mentioned at the beginning of the ep. Her Instagram says like she was hoping to release it in 2025, but there's like no new updates. Her website used to have updates on, because she, again, edited these books for second editions, and then that means she had to edit also the second book. So she had all these progress trackers on the stories she was writing, but now we can't see those. And I want to know what happened, and I want my first edition book, and I want my follow-up to Heart of Stone. Heart of Stone is actually like a really good book. It's a mafia romance. I actually like highly suggest it. So anyways, girly, I hope you're doing well. I always think when I first read this book in 2020 when it had a little moment on TikTok, and I was really listening to a lot of Lover by Taylor Swift. False God just reminds me of Will and Kara so much. So whenever I'm reading this book or whatever, that like saxophone is playing in my head. Just because I think that song feels so like sensual, and Will is like a very like sensual person. Like I do think like it just seems like Kara always describes them having sex as like sensual and like erotic and like a teensy bit romantic, but he's like, I'm only romantic with you. Again, very Conrad. I'm cold to everyone but not you. That song I just feel like really suits them. And then I think, and I don't know this for sure, but I think C.K. Bennett said when she pictures Will, she pictures a certain person, and when she pictures Kara, she pictures kind of like Cara Delevingne. Like, I think this like gap in the tooth, I think she filled that in. But okay, let's move on to our wonder whys. These are unanswered questions for the listeners. One of my only wonder whys is, like, why did Kara not know Will before? Especially if she wanted to be a lawyer. There's no way that Jason wasn't like, I think there was like something like they were like studying abroad, or like he went to school somewhere else, or like whatever. But like, I just think if you are friends with an aspiring lawyer, you would connect. I guess he did connect Kara with John, but like I feel like you would connect her to Will too. Just like my sister's a doctor, and whenever like I've had a few friends that have wanted to go to med school, or some students that I work with that have wanted to go to med school, and I like always hook them up so they can talk shop. And I just don't know why. And then I think the other wonder why is like Kara is so logical in like every other matter. It's why I think her and Will get along so well. But all the lying is like so crazy. Like, I know it comes from a place of like not being able to be vulnerable, but like I just think that it seems like her values, like with law, is like fair and justice or justness. And I just don't know why she would make up this web of lies. And I feel like she's a logical person to just be like, I will eventually get caught up in these, because that's what happens when you build a web of lies. And then our gripes and grumbles, these are nitpicky problems we have with the book. Again, I have very few problems. These are my picky nits though. Again, the nakedness around Jason, like obviously that's going to stop once they start dating, but like, and like maybe I'm just like a prude, puritanical freak that shouldn't sexualize bodies, but like, I just think, I don't know, it's like kind of crazy. And I feel like they continue to, I guess like he didn't know, but she knew. But it would be weird if she all of a sudden asked him to wear clothes. I don't know, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's weird. I think it's weird. And then, some of my gripes and grumbles are just like, like the Instagram messages, like stuff like that is just like so inappropriate. Or like him getting her coffee every day. It's like so cute. And then she's like, well, do you get Ellie coffee every day? Like, it's going to look weird if you get me coffee every day. And he's like, no, well, and I'm like, yeah, it will. Oh my God, this is such a small thing, but it bugs me every time I read this. And I've read this book like a billion times. But when they're in the club and he fingers her, she's like, I've never come with just someone's fingers. And I like want him to be the first to do that or whatever. And I think that's insane, because I don't think she obviously is a sexual person and stuff like that. I'm just like, and she talks about how Aaron is good in bed. And I'm just like, I just feel like that's crazy. I feel like it would have been more realistic if she said, I've never come from like oral sex or something like that. But the fingers, like, I feel like would never be true. I don't know why romance novels, I guess it shows the connection and why the MMC is so great. But I'm like, there's always this thing of like, he made me come for the first time, or like, we did this for the first time together. We stopped using condoms and I've never done that before. Like all these like first things, and a lot of them I'm like, these just like really don't matter. And then some of the differences between the first edition, there's this farm girl scene where they like go out for lunch at one point that I guess people really didn't like, and she cut it from the second edition. And then actually Livy and Jason kind of have some moments in, I think, the first edition of the book, but it's not in the second edition. And then this is the real kicker. So Will obviously likes marathon sex. Like he talks all the time about this. I also think this was taken out of the second edition, but like, please don't quote me on this, because I thought kind of I was reading the first edition all the time, but the last like 3 times I've read this, I've only read the second edition. Cause again, I like lost my copy of the first edition and I fucking need it. But when they have sex for the first time, he makes her count to 10 with how many orgasms that she has. He likes marathon sex. There are ways that guys can do this. Like obviously you can increase your stamina, but I think most of the time it's just like swapping. It's like once you feel like an orgasm is coming on, you stop and you do some other activity, like give her head or like whatever to like stave it off, and then you start having sex again. We could have left it at that. But when they have marathon sex, when Jason's there and he has to turn on the music, after Jason's like, how, like, are you alive? Like, how did you just have sex for like 3 hours? And they're like laughing because Jason hasn't had sex in a really long time. And in the first edition, he says, well, like, I do like Kegels and stuff like that. And like talks about when I feel like I'm going to come, I do something else or whatever. So I was like, okay, normal. In the first edition, and I just said all of that aloud into a microphone that hundreds of people are going to hear. I am blushing when I say in the first edition, he talks about doing exercises with his dick where he is using weights. It's giving yoni egg. It's giving goop. And I just was like, that sounds crazy to me that he's like doing Kegels with like a weight on the end of his dick. Like I'm so embarrassed. It's funny because I have a private Twitter that I rarely use, but sometimes will randomly tweet. And when I read this book in 2020 or whatever, it's like, it was like page like 398 or something like that. And I was like reading it for the first time. And I remember I came across this and I tweeted like, when you read the most perfect, like your all-time favorite book and it ruins it all on page like 398 or whatever, like that's so disappointing. But it's not in the second edition, I swear to God. So maybe she got feedback on that one too. Okay, next is our side character spotlight. This is our nomination for an unforgettable supporting character who deserves their due, because sometimes the best characters aren't the main event. And I'm giving it to Jason because Livy is so annoying. I'm also very curious about Violet, but I know IRL I would be really threatened by her, so I couldn't pick her. Ellie's really funny and really helps Kara out, so she was a contender. Aaron, obviously tried and true. I feel like he gets like really upset with Kara, and obviously it's like he has a right to be upset with her, but I do feel like, because she's like crying and being really upset about it, and I do kind of feel like if someone hurts you but they feel so bad about it, not that you have to like immediately forgive them, but like I do feel like you should kind of like soften the blow. At least that's what I think. And he just really doesn't. But yeah, Livy's annoying to me. Andy's kind of annoying to me. And Jason, I think he's really funny. He's really like golden retriever, puppy dog and stuff like that. And I do wonder if this series was actually supposed to be a trilogy. Then when of the first editions, there's a major cliffhanger at the end of book 2, first edition. But then when she reworked book 1, she reworked book 2, so now it's a duet. But I am always curious if she was going to have Livy and Jason together, like, or like have like a spin-off series or something like that. But yeah, Jason is my side character that deserves a spotlight. Okay, finally, sequel scoop. This is our tea in any upcoming sequels, seasons, and the general reception. So the next book, like I said, is, if you're reading the first edition, Into the Night. If you're reading the second edition, technically this book is called When the Night Falls, and the second one is called Heart of the Night. There's like some really beautiful covers. She kind of explains why she picked those covers and stuff. So I like all of that stuff. But yeah, if anyone has a first edition, fucking hit me up and let me know if I should cover book 2. Okay, that's the story of Skin of the Night. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to me for today's show. I've not been reading as much just because, I don't know, I feel like I've been a little bit up and down mental health wise. I've also been real life dating, trying that out. I feel like that's been hard to do and read books and still enjoy it. So I'm hoping that this little reread moves me into another reading phase. I'm sure it will as winter is upon us. But I'll be back in November after my vacation. If you want to keep in touch during the break, you can follow me on socials at Ready to Be Romanced. You can also check out my other podcast at Ready to Be Petty. It's on Patreon only. And of course, subscribe so you know when we're back, and leave a rating and review to let me know that I'm on track. If you want to suggest a book for a future episode, you can do so via the links in the episode show notes. Our next episode is undecided, but I'm excited for whatever we pick. Until then, happy reading. For Ready to Be Romanced, I'm Tori. Goodbye.